He has a meeting. He will be back with us at 11. Great. Welcome back, everybody, to Senate Economic Development, Housing and General Affairs. It's good to have you. And we are now picking up our cannabis bill discussion. And for that, we are going to return to our incredibly able legislative counsel who has who had begun going through the bill in depth. And we're going to, I think, given where we are and the time frame we're in, we're going to have them go through it again because we only got through like the first two sections, as I recall. And we're going to go through it, and we're really going to talk about what each section entails. And at a fairly high level, we've now heard quite a bit on each of these sections and opportunities. And I think we also have, I want everyone in the room to appreciate we have very limited time on a big subject that we have not necessarily had enough time on to make thoughtful decisions on. So there may be things that we just have to punt to the House for further conversation. I apologize, but that is just the way it's probably going to be.
Can I ask a question that was related in my mind, at least? Are we getting out the tobacco bill?
Yeah, we're doing that tomorrow morning. Okay. And we have a new draft, and it's great.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. So,
Good.
Janice, we're coming. Good morning,
Anderson,
welcome.
Legislative counsel, incredibly able, but apparently not incredible. We're going to be working through draft 1.1 of the committee strike all amendment to S278. The chair has requested that I start all the way back at the beginning. Last time the committee visited the amendment, we made it through 3 sections. So I'll recap those 3 sections and then do a high level overview of the other sections of the bill and await your instruction on how I am to proceed with preparing the next version of this amendment. Section 1, high level. This relates to the concentration cap for liquid concentrate cannabis products, and it raises that percentage limit from 60% to 70%.
Do you want commentary as we go on these points then, Karen?
Actually, if people are clear on how they're feeling at the moment, I would happily welcome any thoughts, because we're going to be making decisions in the next 2 days.
I would not say I'm clear on this thinking, but what I will say, I will put this out there to have others educate and inform me on this topic, is I personally am comfortable with removing or raising the potency caps on the flower and buds, because I don't want people having to smoke twice as much in order to get as high. And I also am under the impression that in the illicit market, these buds are available practically anywhere. On the liquid side, I like regional consistency. And if this is just contemplating going from 60 to 70%, and that's what our neighbors do, I'm also comfortable with that. But I could be persuaded otherwise. But that's where I currently am. But I will look for medical professionals to tell me why that's a terrible opinion to have.
So you are supportive of raising the potency cap to 70%?
Correct. Supportive is a strong word. I would say I'm ambivalent. And I am not against it. I am worried that if the governor has strong opinions on this, that this is going to be veto based. But maybe that's not a factor in our consideration conversations at this point.
I think we'll know more about that as the process goes along. And I don't think it's a good idea for anyone to try and articulate that on the record right now. But my sense is that nothing right now is a deal breaker for the administration.
I just like saying the quiet parts out loud.
Yeah, no, sure. I mean, I do too, but
I think there are things that, in all fairness, there are things the administration holds its nose at. There are things that outright dislikes and would veto.
They are watching.
There are things there are okay.
And delivery.
Yeah,
but nothing has become a deal breaker.
What was the first one? What
caps and delivery.
I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
Okay. Potency, I'm fine. You're fine. And David, thoughts on potency?
What I don't think you mentioned, I'm not sure it's in this section, but the edible
We're not raising edibles at all. Those are not being touched in this bill.
Not
I-
touched.
Last one,
That was
Our legislature.
Bill,
5 to 10.
but I don't support it. The big edibles should be stronger. Sugared products.
should we get our little graph out because it is like,
Up a little bit.
I'm sympathetic
Why not?
to your, yeah. To wherever we are.
So I thought I made my opinion on that previously, and I'm just one vote, but I do not support making edibles more powerful and affecting judgment because they're sugarized commercialized products that kids can eat. And I like the fact that they are low dump density, so that you can meter out their high, especially when there's a delayed aspect. I'll also say that this before, if I had been here when this was passed, I don't know if I could have supported legalized commercialized edibles. I don't have other products like that, but I'm not advocating to take edibles off the market at this point. I just have serious concerns about them. I don't support taking them strong.
Okay, but let's make sure we are having each conversation separately because
Okay,
I think there was a proposal related to more edibles in one package that didn't make it into this.
that's not yet, we're not talking, it's
Right.
section one.
So so this is just the potency of the cultivated cannabis.
Correct.
Land.
Tucker, land was here.
This section is just about liquid concentrate.
Oh, this is liquid.
products. You have not, within the four corners of either the bill as introduced or this amendment so far, touched upon edibles or solid concentrate products.
Well, it does say solid and liquid concentrate.
Solid.
Okay, I'm sorry. I was looking at this handout. And this says
That was provided to you from a witness or from a.
oh, okay, maybe I thought section, it looked like section 1 was
Is that,
striking the cap for the flower. But
I don't know who that's from because I don't have it. in front
so
of me.
I think what Tom is saying is do that, strike the cap for the flower.
No, I think he's fine with the flour and I think he's fine with the liquid. It's the edible.
But the flower is no longer in the bill for some reason. The
Yeah,
cap,
it's solid
No,
and
that's-
liquid,
The-
the concentrates are right here.
it used to have a lifting of the cap on the flower, and that's what Tom is saying is he'd be open to lifting the cap on the flower as opposed to the concentrate.
On the rationale to be consistent regionally and to not have people find legal weed have to smoke more carcinogens or whatever in their lungs in order to get the high.
And this is challenging, Madam Chair, because I don't know when the flower cap got taken out. Like, I'm not clear on when
I have never, this is the bill as we've gotten it, so.
This is the amendment that the committee put together, and part of what the committee heard about the bill as introduced is that the current limit associated with cannabis flower is essentially the biological upper limit of what that can be grown. So I see heads shaking, but that's what the committee heard. So
Right.
if there's different testimony, fantastic.
So there is the limit is what you can biologically grow.
I am not a cannabis scientist, so I cannot offer any testimony on what.
I don't
other
think there
biological
is-
limit of
Yeah,
cannabis
it's limited to what the plant
Okay.
can produce, so I don't think there is a
Are
limit.
we talking about the THC limit of the flower? So what,
So we have an expert here, Pepper, can you fill us in?
Is there a limit on flower right now?
There is,
Okay.
it's 30% THC. On flour, there's a 60% THC cap on solid concentrates.
Okay, so
What I understand, this bill eliminates or raises the 60% on solid concentrates to 70% and does not touch the 30% flour.
okay, so the flower is sort of a whole separate animal. We have not had any testimony on that. That will have to leave to the House because we do not have time for more testimony on that.
okay, we had a big discussion about it because
We did.
no other state but Connecticut.
We haven't
Limit.
actually discussed. the
How did Tom get all this information?
This is what I was referring, so I thought we were talking
had a
about flower
conversation about
potency, but if the House wants to take it on, that's fine.
No,
with me.
Pepper,
Yeah.
you provided this.
That's
Can
right.
You share with us what this includes.
That is just a number of policy areas that I heard discussed throughout the course of this bill being debated. I gave you a regional breakdown of how in New England, those states deal with those various policy issues.
And we had a whole discussion about a dilution process related to how much THC content is in the flower and how you have to dilute that to get a concentrate of the level we're requiring.
Okay, given that we have not had we have really focused our conversation on liquid and solid, which is in this bill at the moment. I think that the flower discussion, quite honestly, we do not have the time to pick up a new subject right now.
It wasn't new.
it is new. We have not really had a full discussion of that, unless people feel, my impression is we've been dealing with section 1 as it has come to us. And so what I think I hear Thomas saying is he is fine with section 1.
Sure, yeah. And I would just, if I could babble some more, I would say where I'm hearing the most concerns in the hallways is on potency cap. So maybe leaving this for the house to take on, or if flower might be a wise thing to do with this.
Including the flowers.
On the section.
So the potency caps have been a huge subject of the emails that we've gotten, and I know it's a concern. David and Randy, you have fairly strong feelings on the potency cap.
I'm concerned about it. Again, medical testimony that we've got, that's probably one of the biggest conflicts that we're seeing between proponents for the bill and what we're getting from the health community, and these folks have difficulties for us and some concerns.
Which potency cap are you saying you're worried about? The concentrate?
The concentrate probably more than anything else.
And the sort of liquid and solid.
But yeah, well,
Okay, section 1 is what you're concerned.
So,
Yeah, Thomas.
so I would share that concern, but from what I understand, the concentrate is used at base, so that's a faster delivery mechanism. So I didn't know that the flour had been removed, but I would say I'm more comfortable with raising the caps in the flour than I am on the concentrate. But where does that leave us in this conversation?
You know, because we haven't really discussed the flower in full depth, and I think that the flower, it's a very, I don't see it, I don't know what the proposal was for the flower to take it from 30 to what?
To not have an artificial cap,
Which many other states have.
To no cap.
to no cap, because you're asking them to engineer the THC content of a plant before it's then processed into other things.
So there is one other state, Connecticut, which is consistent with us on both caps. Connecticut has a 30% cap and a 60% cap.
But may I ask a question of Mr.
Yeah.
Trump? Is there any conversation that you know of in Connecticut? Are they looking similarly at addressing these caps anyway?
I would assume, just like in Vermont, this conversation comes up every year, but I don't know that.
Especially their proximity to New York.
Well, we have sort of, both of us have close proximity.
Right.
Okay, so we have, at the moment, my understanding is we need 3 options on the table. One is to pull the potency section altogether and leave it to the House to have this further conversation, including the flower. Second is to move in a yes fashion to raising the cap on solid and liquid concentrate, which is in section 1. And the third is, I guess, those are the.
Well, I thought-
is to pull those sections or to.
I'd like to propose we lift the cap on the flower and leave the other caps in place because this is where it's challenging for our very small growers and our, it's like, there's a lot of requirements placed on them for testing and things, but it is a plant. So I would propose that we lift the cap on the flower and leave it everywhere else if we're not ready to have that discussion.
I'd love to hear Senator Weeks.
Yeah, so I'd actually opt for first option, simply because I don't feel comfortable with the whole cap conversation, with the exception of edibles. And my understanding of flower, the experts in the room can help us out. The flower is very different than it was 30, 40 years ago because we bioengineer for maximum effect, et cetera, et cetera. So there may be a plant limit right now, but removing any cap on the flower, it could potentially change 5, 10 years from now.
But that's
Bioengineer.
kind of Senator Chittenden point, which is then you can smoke less and have the THC impact that you desire.
Ask a question. In these buds, flowers that are sold, do we require that they state THC content levels on them really clear so people know the strength of these things?
Yes.
Yeah. And all of ours currently say 30%.
Or less.
I mean, the indoor, yes, I mean, 30% or less, yes. Yes.
30% or less.
30% or less, yes.
This is. Can we let the growers speak?
Absolutely, what, we could weigh
You
in.
haven't heard a lot on that.
Briefly, for the record, Jeffrey Pizzatola, Vermont Growers Association. So first of all, I just want a point of clarity. We are dealing with a plant. It is not a widget. So what that means is it is impossible to predict and anticipate THC levels. It can vary per branch. It is not a widget. Okay, it is a plant. So that's important to keep in mind. Second of all, there is no sort of biological limit for cannabis. It doesn't reach 100%. It has thresholds, but the plant itself is not a precise factory, and there's no ceiling for THC levels. And I will keep in mind, I'll conclude by saying that, first of all, our neighboring states, we do hear from retailers, oh, they see a 32% or something that's not available in our state. Vermonters do travel out of state to get that product. The frequency to be determined, or ask about that. But lastly, doesn't include perhaps something that's not really being talked about in this discussion is, believe it or not, the emphasis at the state level on THC actually creates greater awareness of it, and people shop per THC level when there's a THC cap, because the state is saying that, wait a minute, this is important. It is an intoxicating element of the plant, even though it's not the only intoxicating compound. And that it's actually bringing that awareness to consumers, and it's having the counter effect, if that makes any sense. And it's enabling individuals to shop more by THC level, as opposed to maybe choosing products with a lower THC percentage. So it's having the reverse impact for consumers.
Jeffrey, in states that have removed the cap altogether, which are most of the states around us,
Correct.
do they make available in retail shops, or do they make available THC at lower concentrates for people who are not interested, who might?
Yes,
I mean, just like we have alcohol at different concentrates,
exactly.
do they also provide, do they provide flour at different concentrates?
They do. And that's when you want to have a discussion with your bartender or your bud tender. And honestly, if that takes place, then they direct people to more moderate. It's really, we want to remove the emphasis, the over-screenization of THC. It's really having the opposite effect of the state. So sure.
No, I appreciate that. And we've had other testimony to support that as well.
Sure, let me clarify.
Red.
Grammy Inkster for not policy director for Vermont. I just wanted to clarify, I think in the first draft of this bill, which you all didn't get a chance to look at in committee, the flower caps were removed or raised. That's just maybe a point of confusion I just wanted to address, because some people feel like it wasn't in the bill, and some people feel like it was in the bill, and now it's not.
Yeah.
So that might be why
It was in the original proposal, but not in the bill as introduced.
I think it was in the
Yes.
bill as introduced,
What
it's
is
not
it?
in version 1.1. And the other point I just wanted to make is this whole THC thing. We've heard a lot from producers who are producing flower at a much lower THC level, that they are not able to market that flower because retailers will not buy it. They are trying to buy high THC flower. So I'm just making another argument for direct markets. You are not going to see people smoking lower THC flower or trying other products until they can go to those producers themselves and they can explain why this is an effective product, even though it's lower in THC.
Okay, we did have this conversation out at lunch councils we went through with Matt, to that decision until that was there. So I just want to remind us, we did make that decision together. Thomas, you
So I
have a thought?
appreciate your comments, Senator Weeks. So I guess where I would be on the options that you outlined is either pull the potencies, just to let the House deal with this, or I actually am much more comfortable with this conversation with raising them for the flowers. And as for the concentrate, I do have more concerns. So if we do move forward to concentrate to the floor and to speak to constituents, it'll be harder for me to defend it. But with raising the potency caps of the flowers, I think that is a reasonable thing. Most of my constituents will say, yeah, it makes sense to just take that cap off. So that's where I am. Either take it all out or just do the flowers.
And then the understanding is that in retail shops, they're marketed by potency level. Are they sold by potency level?
Maybe Jeff.
That is the option. That is up to the retailer.
Okay,
We encourage retailers to not advertise explicitly THC, to not promote that sort of behavior, to have more of a conversation about why more moderate levels are.
but it's labeled, isn't it?
On the
Right.
actual
Go ahead.
package, which is
Yeah.
different than being like on the display case or outwardly communicating advertising in the store.
Yeah, just like we look at alcohol and you can see
Precisely.
the alcohol content. The consumer has the opportunity to see the THC.
When they have the package in their hand, absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Right, okay. Yeah.
What-
Sorry,
No, I didn't say.
okay, patient.
what I think is being said is that often people are still making their own consumer decision. Things like microdosing would be equivalent to low alcohol by volume, right? So people are choosing like kombucha and low ABV cocktails that we've supported, just like people have a range of decisions they're making about how much of an effect they want to have on their body. So I just want to remind us, this is like the exact same conversation as alcohol in many ways. You know, we are concerned about binge drinking. We're concerned about someone, you know, drinking 30 beers or a whole bottle of spirits. But most people use this information to just decide what kind of experience they want to have and not to have substance misuse occur.
Okay, I would suggest that we let this sit for a moment and keep going through the bill, and then we will come back. If we are gonna need to make decisions on this. So I really, before we leave section 1, I think we have, I do think we have including flour, no cap, liquid and solid, raising it up or not. And the third is to let all the potency options go for this bill and let the House deal with it. So I think those are our 3 options that we have at the moment on that section. Section 2, let's just focus on this and what this accomplishes.
Section 2 goes hand in hand with section 1. It raises the age to 25 for those products that are increasing in potential potency from 60% to 70%.
Has any other state done that? So
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. If we do
Yeah.
go with the potency increases, let's raise the age.
Okay, so
That was the partnership.
Dave,
Madam Chair, David Mickenberg, here on behalf of a variety of cannabis establishments. The one caveat on this piece is that if you do that, that would mean that which is currently separated out for vapes, which was in the original bill as passed. It would seem that would indicate that would raise the purchase age to 25 for vape cartridges. I don't know if that's intended or not, but it's a consideration that you should have.
so are you?
I would suggest leaving it at 21 for vape cartridges, which have been included in the bill since the beginning as an exception to the cap on solid on the.
But we don't want increased vaping for people, both either for tobacco or for cannabis.
Understood, but I don't think the tobacco vape age is 25.
Right.
So it'd just be 21. So consistency for the way that adults 21 or over consume. Some would like to not have combustible cannabis. That's their choice. I just want to make it clear that if you do this would now do something different than what we've done all along in this market, which is raise the age on vapes to 25. And that's a pretty major policy decision to make. That's been in there since the bill was originally passed. I just wanted to point that
Nothing
out.
is, oh, you mean the
Not bad.
original?
The original cannabis bill as passed allowed for people to consume through vapes, adults to consume 21 or older through vape cartridges. And so, or vape product, whatever. And so this would be a change from that original intent of the legislature to say now, if you want to buy,
Increased potencies.
but it's not a potency issue. It's separate than that. So vape cartridges are their own thing in the cannabis market. They have potency levels that are allowed. And this would say that vape cartridges, which are now allowed to be purchased at the age of 21, it would be required that they would be people 25 or older for that specific form factor. So I just want to be clear, that's a pretty big policy change with that language.
I appreciate that. It does say that it's for the increased potency, not for the 21 and under. 20 on 21 and over could still purchase, THC vapes. They just can't purchase anything that would be 70%.
But I recommend, Mr. Mickenberg, though, that if that age limit, actually gets this thing out of committee, then you can fix it in the House. But I mean, if it makes us more comfortable raising the potency limits, knowing that it would also only apply to 25-year-olds, we can maybe look at, like, carve out an exception later down the pike in this discussion.
Yeah, I think it, because the language says cannabis products, not solid cannabis product, that's a distinction. So the potency limits that you're talking about raising, if you just insert, if you decide to do that, and we distinguish out the vape cartridges, which have always been separated as a
Right.
separate category. So,
I would point out that this goes back to Senator Chitten's original point. Many states still regulate edibles differently because that is the thing that is the last time I consumed THC was college, when someone was like, here's pesto pasta, that gets people high at a very different level depending on the THC content and can make people extremely sick. And when you're consuming something that you think is like a meal or a chocolate or a gummy, you're having a very different experience with that product, and it's very hard to absorb it the same way person to person. So a child could really injure themselves, a young person could really injure themselves.
This is not edible. This is,
What I'm saying is, I think Senator Chittenden made a very good point that most of the states we're looking at have very different limits for edibles than they do everything else.
Okay, so.
and Tucker.
Just briefly respond to some of the issues that were just raised. The last time you looked at this, the committee had already given the instruction that if this moves forward, you wanted clarification around the cannabis products that are covered by this. And the instruction was liquid or solid concentrate cannabis products, not the entire defined universe of cannabis.
Right.
products.
But that's all to say, if we mess with the age, etc., I don't think it's addressing people's direct concern. I think people are getting confused about the consumption methods. And I don't think, like, vapes are kind of an out of the box thing. I think vapes are a concern. It's tobacco, other chemicals that come from China. Where I heard the most concern about young people over consuming something was edibles.
Okay, so we aren't addressing edibles in this
Right.
bill, as far as I could tell, except in packaging. So, what I think I hear is, should we limit this just to vapes in section 2? Do we even, the language doesn't limit it to vapes.
If I'm not mistaken, I believe Tucker has an answer that addresses Mr. Mickenberg's concern.
It may, in fact, not address the concern, but it was the point of clarification you asked for last time, which was that draft 1.1 used the term cannabis products, which is a wide definition. And the request was to make sure that this pairs specifically section 1, covering solid or liquid concentrate cannabis products. And the raised age would apply only to those products that contain between 60 to 70% THC.
And Pepper, you have
Great. Yes, for the record, James Pepper, cannabis controller. I don't think I ever said that, but the committee, the reason why there's a distinction between solid and liquid concentrates to begin with is a result of a crisis that happened across the country where people were dying from smoking illegal cannabis vapes. That was determined by the CDC. That's not something that I'm substituting my judgment for. And you guys, that's why you have a distinction, because you wanted to allow this. What you're saying, you wanted to allow vapes, so you're not pushing people towards alternative markets, purchasing these things online. What you're going to say here is, if you raise the age on vapes, is that people age 21 to 25 are going to just purchase these things online, and God knows what's in them, frankly, but so for the same reason the Cannabis Board has written 3 reports saying you shouldn't have potency caps, because there are robust alternative markets that operate in parallel to this market. you really shouldn't be raising the age on this stuff. And the conversation originally around putting this new age restriction was if you're going to increase the potency of the solid concentrates, you may want to consider heightened age restrictions for solid concentrates or enhanced labeling requirements or enhanced bud tender education. Those are the types of things that you would want for higher potency products. You want consumers to know what they're kind of getting into.
The most important thing we have to remember is that people are most in danger on the illicit market. You're most in danger when someone puts some THC butter in some food, or, you know, they don't have a package that tells them exactly what they're eating.
Did I just hear Mr. Pepper say 3 times you've written reports that recommend removing the potency caps?
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And we don't try and tell you guys what to do on policy choices, but you guys have, this debate has raged from the beginning.
Rage.
Yes. I mean, we haven't even gotten to section 3 of the bill because yes, you know, but I'm just saying that you've asked us, you know, the Senate has removed the caps, the House has put them back in for 3 years now. And every time the compromise is Cannabis Board write a report about the efficacy of these caps. So,
Thank you.
And you every time had recommended we remove the caps.
right. And that is based upon stakeholder input. That's been, you know, we had a 14-member advisory committee, including the Commissioner of Health at the time, that was part of the drafting of that report. They didn't vote on it, but yes, he did. He was on the committee.
Yes, he was, yes.
Yeah.
He didn't recommend removing the potency caps.
Abstinence does not work.
No. Well, no, abstinence doesn't work. Well, on some things it does. Maybe less chocolate. Maybe it has that. That's possible.
Could I just raise a question?
Yeah, but I think with Jill, were you wanting to say something?
Yeah, so Jill Soltop here, and I represent Vermont Medical Society, and we have definitely been part of this conversation since 2019, since the creation of this law, and going back to this idea of the potency caps. When we first put this law into place, we were saying, let's have public health be part of our regulated market. And so 60% THC is a very high level already. And what we're trying to do is indicate to people that you need to have caution here. So there's definitely, with the edibles, we have accidental ingestions that have, gone up exponentially. But we also have a body of evidence that's growing.
When you say exponentially.
I don't think that's actually the fact. I mean, we've heard actually to the contrary that the edible problems have gone down.
Well,
I believe that's what Pepper testified to.
we have an ER and toxicologist that gave you testimony. They didn't
Right.
get to testify,
Was that the
but
Dartmouth person?
no, UVM. Who's talking about what they're seeing in the ER. And then I gave you.
But
data
that's likely to
last-
be illicit.
No, that's edibles that kids are getting into age 0 to 6.
We never saw that.
Yeah, we have,
on your
we have it, we
I
have.
mean, it's illicit if a child is eating edibles anyway, but
And I have data too from the toxicology folks that I gave you last spring. And so, but we were talking about the high potency concentrates as well. And what we're seeing is this body of evidence that shows with regular use of high potency cannabis, there are serious public health
Right.
impacts, which include psychosis, schizophrenia,
And we-
and this cannabis.
And we had Rick testified yesterday to support that. That's regular use. That means sort of almost like addictive behavior. And
well,
that is
we haven't
something
heard
that-
regular use defined.
Yes, so regular use defined from a public health perspective is using it within 30 days, like regularly. So
Is that
30
month.
days. I mean,
Yes,
30 days. I mean, if you use it every day, that would be regular use.
but it's the way that public health defines it, right? So
Yeah.
they're trying to distinguish between you saying, yeah, I used it once and this happened, because obviously that would not be causation. So they're saying regular users. So I can get you the definition of how they define that, but the problem also is that the normalization, we already have the highest use rate of cannabis among our youth already, and
Of
that's
the country,
of the country. Yes,
Vermont.
yes, and then we have 48% of our 18 to 25-year-olds use cannabis. And I'm not saying that they're getting it.
Did it go
tested
up
with-
since we legalized?
Yes.
How much? Did you suffer?
Bill. And so, to Pepper, you also gave us testimony on this, that the edible
The accidental
accidents had gone
exposures.
down.
Yes, I mean, what I sent you is just the New England poison control cannabis exposures broken out by year and by New England state. So, I'm looking at data right now. I have this in my previous testimony.
It's on,
It's on the website. So we had a high watermark in 2023 of 47 out of all age demographics.
In Vermont.
In Vermont. And in 2024, it was 28. And in 2025, it was 34. Notably, the numbers between ages 0 to 12 are going down.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay, Randy had a comment and then we need to.
Well, it's needing to move on and needing to make decisions.
Yeah.
We have to make a decision on this bill today or tomorrow.
Exactly.
And there's a limited amount of time, and we've got, and among the things that we've heard probably about this more than anything else we've heard about during all the things that we've looked at this year, is that there's a great divide between the producing community and the medical community. And I still haven't gotten a whole lot of clarity on which side I should move to. My inclination, though, is that medical evidence, which we heard relatively little of early in these discussions, have had an increasing impact. And I gather there are increasing documents and studies and so on that support the view that we are having increasing problems. I'm very reluctant to increase potency or anything else with cannabis right now until I get a better resolution of the competing sides and a better resolution of the issue of the medical problems that seem to be associated with increasing concentration of content. I'm particularly disturbed about what I'm hearing about the medical aspects of edibles, for example, which I hadn't heard much about at all before this testimony, and indeed before some of the things we've heard today.
Okay. And so we're not touching
As
it.
a result, I am not inclined to do much of anything that increases concentrations at all in anything right now until we have more testimony, more information, more documents, and more evidence to decide on.
And we have limited time for that.
So-
That's correct.
David, did you have a thought?
Punt. Punt the THC levels, let the House deal with it. It's gonna come back to us. If we have another pass at it.
And we'll have a
Take
chance to
that
get some
story.
more evidence in the meantime.
We can continue
There's no
work on this,
crisis.
although the House will be working on it. Thomas will be.
So similarly, I would say, since we know the crossover deadline, what might make the most sense is remove these sections and know that we have that seen before where we could continue to take testimony next Tuesday, Wednesday, when we're breathing easier. And if we want to bring a floor amendment before this comes forward, then that gives us more time to hear from it. I am more persuaded that we should look at this issue, and I do think this is the toughest issue. That's why we're spending the most time on it. But the fact that they keep telling us that we should remove these caps, and I do respect their opinion, tells me that this is where we should be focusing our time. Maybe if we have more breathing room next week, consider more testimony.
Right. I would entertain that and then entertain that with 3 people suggesting that. I would then suggest we, at the moment, for the next draft, strike sections 1 and 2. Have yet to talk about sections 3. And then we can continue that conversation. We could absolutely have a floor amendment and we could have testimony on Tuesday or Wednesday. So on that, let's move to section 3.
Section 3, we made it. Sorry, Tucker.
Section 3, increasing the package limits from 100 milligrams of THC to 200.
But not this is not edibles, and this is not on the edibles themselves, just the amount of edibles in the pack. Is that correct? The edible is as potent, that you can just buy.
This is not increasing potency. This is increasing volume.
The term that is used is cannabis product. Not sure if it's further narrowed in the preceding subdivisions that follow it, but we're talking about packages of cannabis products, which is the broad definition within Title 7.
Which includes edibles.
Yes.
The idea here being you're just buying whole packaging.
The plus of this, as we heard, I think the most compelling testament was for people who have to travel distances to, because we have such a desert in so many parts of the state for our retail cannabis that people, it would be, but it would make it much easier for people if.
But there's no limit on the number of packages you can walk away with. It's a serving, it's a container size.
There is, I think there is a limit.
Was there?
That's the next section. I'll let Tyler get to it.
They can leave the store and go back in, buy more, but I think they can only leave with so much.
So how many, so to frame it in the form of a question, if we're talking about edibles, 100 milligrams, how many, what's the equivalent ounces?
Well, we deal with 2 ounces in the next section, which I see what you're trying to figure out is how much.
Yeah, so how many 100 milligram THC boxes of edibles can a guy walk away with or a lady walk away with in a Vermont store?
Right. Do you want me to answer that? Is that all right?
Yes.
Okay, so the current transaction limit, and this is a Colorado paper that's also part of my testimony about how you make an equivalency, is 8,400. So you could walk away with 84 packages of 100 milligrams. So you cut that in half.
That should do it. Never know.
This just reduces the amount of packaging. Like this is really about just, can you buy a 12 pack or only a 6-pack?
Right.
So this is the combination of recycling time and effort for people to get to these places. I think that's what this is. Am I right in that?
I mean, this section right here really is just, are you going to permit people to sell the equivalent of a 12 pack or are we going to be stuck with buying multiple 6-packs? Right.
Section.
I'm fine with this section.
What do you mean? You're fine with the section? You're fine with increasing it to 200 milligram packages?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm just looking at where.
Yeah, no.
But are you?
I'm ambivalent. I don't think it makes any difference. They can walk away with 84 of them down. Now they can walk away with what?
Well,
40, 22.
So maybe then let's look at it in pairing with section 4, which is a single transaction. Tucker, would you do section 4?
You can actually look at sections 4, 5, and 6 altogether.
Right.
Section 4 increases the single transaction limit from 1 ounce to 2 ounces of cannabis or the equivalent in cannabis products. And you've heard some testimony about the difficulty of applying that analysis. And sections 5 and 6,
That they
possession
have to go
limits
together, right?
for civil and criminal penalties or
Right.
civil penalties, excuse me, are increased. Of course.
So, given the range here in our part of the world, I am reasonably okay with these set with sections 4, 5, and 6.
Are we closing section out? Is that what you're looking for? I'm fine. That's what we did in Senate Transportation. They
Yeah.
comprehensive bills. We basically say, yes, this section's fine, and then we just come back to those that we want.
If you're gonna fix the transaction amount, you would then have to do the sections 5 and 6, as far as I understand, we need. Is that, Pepper, is that my understanding?
Yes.
Is that right?
Well, you don't want to be able to sell people enough to turn them into,
Right.
a criminal, essentially. I
Right,
mean,
exactly. So you have to you have to change the criminal.
it's criminal threshold.
We ask, Cannabis Control Board what their opinion is on these particular sections.
Absolutely. Because Gabe has given us a very good memo on this.
Right. We do have a memo and I would defer to that. I mean, this to me is just
It's been a couple weeks.
yeah, no, this is purely a policy choice for you. I mean, it's just how much cannabis do you want people to be purchasing in a single transaction? That's it. I mean,
So you're ambivalent.
this is ambivalent. This is the argument that you heard earlier from the folks that live far away or prefer to just buy in
I
bulk.
remember all
Yes.
this.
Yeah.
Just wondering,
Right.
our Cannabis Control Board has an opinion.
No, this is purely just policy work for you.
Here, I would lead you to Gabe's comments here. Sections 1 through 6 focus on inhalable products, but preserve ingestible product tabs. So what's interesting about that, and I don't fully understand, is we're talking about solid and liquid tabs. And ingestible is a solid. So sorry, my,
Some lessons learned from this parts of Title VII of the Cannabis Shoulders Against Alcoholic Beverages. This entire conversation has gotten a bit confusing because these terms are actually not defined at all for purposes of the cannabis statutes. However, generally accepted that solid concentrate cannabis products are,
In liquid form.
they are not viscous. They are in a more solid form
So
than a liquid and are contact heated typically, and then
so they are, when you talk about solids, it does not include that.
I would use some terms from the field, but I don't know if you would know what, for example, shatter is. Shatter is an example of concentrate stress.
What is that an inhalable?
Yes.
Okay, so the helpful distinction is inhalable, because the vape is also inhalable.
Correct. They are.
So those are, edibles are a very different thing. That's what I was trying to say earlier.
Right, so
You
this
have-
preserves,
Most states treat those very differently because it's like a candy or it's like a meal.
right, exactly,
And if it's descheduled, we might see THC beverages.
got it. So what Gabe said, to go to David's question, is in respect to section 4. And of this amendment, the existing statutory language or the equivalent in cannabis products has been problematic to operationalize because it's not possible to compute mathematical equivalence between drug products that use different modes of administration. If a more enforceable transaction limit on cannabis products is desired, consider specifying in statute the THC milligram limit, which is what we do in section 3, right?
Not exactly. But this is this is a really complicated area of the law and probably not something that there's going to be much agreement about in the next 2 days. I have a memo that explains this in great detail because when Colorado was first asked to create a product equivalency to 1 ounce of cannabis,
That's right.
there's about 4 or 5 different ways you could calculate that based upon the different modes of administration and how it's absorbed in the body and the onset of the intoxication. So, if you want to do equivalency in statute, you can, but I can tell
So
you.
given Gabe's comment there, I think we do need you to weigh in on because my understanding is that you are, that the CCB supports sections 3, 4, 5, and 6. Or 4, 5, and 6.
Yes, I mean, listen, a person can walk into a cannabis store currently, buy 1 ounce of cannabis, walk out of the door, come back in and buy another
Which
ounce.
seems silly.
So this is just trying to accommodate the people that live far away or don't
Right.
want to do that or kind of want to do that kind of dance. So
Yeah.
it's not really changing much policy.
Right.
Yeah, so I'm ambivalent about sections 3 through 6. I could go with it. To me, it just doesn't matter. It's like finding a case, you're right, 6 minutes.
Right. That's sort of where I landed. So I feel that we're good to go on sections 3 through 6.
Yes. We're on page 5.
We're on page 5, good.
The event permit establishes a pilot program. The Cannabis Control Board to issue up to 10 of these permits per year, 2-year period.
And given that we supported this last year, I think it's consistent on our part to support this again. I think this would give us good information about how we want to roll out the events.
Pick up on what I said last time this came up. I don't
Yeah.
know if you drafted any provisions, but I'm assuming this will go to Senate Finance if this stays in, of course, Senator Rock. But I do think that there's merit in looking at scale and size of event for a differentiated structure of fees. So that's where I don't think you've really got that language yet, but it's going to be on top of mind if this makes it out of this committee against the Senate Finance.
So the one thing I think we also need to look at in this, because I do support events, the pilot of these events and seeing how they work. The Section 9 reports back on them. The question that we did not what we did not include last year was the consuming aspect. And the question is, do we want to? That is I think the key difference on this one from last year. And that's the one thing that I also think needs discussion.
So if we're gonna look at this from an economic perspective and give guidance then to the finance committee, then what I would say is that one of the proposals that's been made to us is that we look at the tier 1 and 2 cultivators and retailers, because those are our kind of craft producers. That we got into the whole like, and you have to do this and you have to do that. But the idea being that you are trying to give preference to our in-state cultivators and retailers in some way. And that was one idea of how to do it that was put on the table. And then I think that would give the finance committee guidance that we might be looking at a lower fee amount, similar to what other small cultivators and businesses have to pay for something versus like, of course, if you have a multi-state retailer or something, you want to charge more, but maybe we don't even give them that option.
Am I wrong in thinking that there's likely to be some huge events with large draws and then also smaller events, which would be more out in the countryside and rural areas?
It's certainly I mean, there's no restriction on that in this.
There's no
There's a
size.
natural restriction, the fact that our staff, we have 7 compliance officers. You know, these things are likely going to be on the weekends. Like we're going to have to limit the size and scope of them just based upon our resources.
So it's on you to design the how we go forward with events. I would hope we could go forward with them ASAP, like this beginning this summer. Do you think you can get your thoughts together for an initial set of permits?
When we were contemplating this last year, we wrote the language such that we defer a lot to the towns to set current, like, you know, if there's got to be an EMT on site, or if there's got to be a deputy sheriff that's on call, or if there needs to be certain time, place, manner restrictions, the town has complete control of that in this. We have a secondary, control over it, but the towns can say, you know, we can essentially outsource.
Can the
to-
towns do consume or not consume?
I forget if you've added this in here.
This was added this year, that we did not have consume last year, as I recall.
Yes, the farmer's market thing.
Right. We did not have consume in that. Did we?
I don't think we did.
Consumption is not specifically called out to
Right.
a local control subdivision, which I will point you to as subdivision B1 concerning the eligibility on page 5. And it requires written approval from local cannabis control commissions or the select board. No commission exists, including conditions and limitations appropriate to protect the public, manage traffic, and abate nuisances. So the local control commissioners are involved in the approval process. Here, the CCB is granted broad discretion to implement all of this through initially procedures. Doesn't have to go through formal rulemaking, can be adopted essentially
Right, which is what we
immediately,
did last.
given them the authority to have the force of law there. So it could be further narrowed, or there could be, additional clarification of what the local conditions are that have to be approved by the control commissioners.
So this gets at 2 conversations that I think we've had in depth, but
Yeah, we
I haven't
have.
had with myself. But number one, that we have not addressed that you can consume cannabis anywhere you can consume tobacco. So wherever you have a smoke product of cannabis, and frankly, actually, this means you have limitations on smokeless or other inhaled products. But this has been a judiciary matter, and Senator Hashim said he was fine with us putting in our bill something that addressed the incongruency about where you can consume tobacco, because otherwise we would then be looking at what we do with alcohol potentially, which is having an on-site permit, not just an event permit where you can purchase a bottle of something or a jar of something, but that you would have it would be an on-site consumption permit. That's what would actually get to what I think we're envisioning, which is weddings or little festivals or something where people can consume legally and safely.
So that, it sounds like we have a provision for that in this language. There's quite a bit of language on this.
Yes, so
So would you
within
lead us through, because I
subdivision
think we allow that.
B6, you contemplate on-site consumption. Specifically, that the board is allowed to, as part of the eligibility standards, prescribe
Or being
for
the select board or the control board in
cannabis control board.
Oh, the CCB, okay, right.
Yes. May prescribe for a particular event or location, limits on attendees or types of products that may be consumed at the event site. So that language corresponds with some concepts that members of the committee have likely heard about, that there's a difference between those events that may take place, for example, outside at a festival grounds versus those products that might be consumed at an indoor space such as wedding venue.
Okay, I'm fine with this section. I'm fine with giving CCB this role, and I think it builds on what we really tried to do, and it's bigger than what we tried to do last year with our farmers markets. Grant, you have a thought?
Yeah, I agree. Meetings for all I would say some aspects of this are really concerning. The fact that there's no public rulemaking process, this is all deferred to the CCB, is very concerning for our community, given especially the level of degree of trust right now with producers and that entity. The deference to municipalities is really concerning. Like, this is a statewide program.
Yeah.
And so I'm just trying to play this out in our head. So someone applies for this. There's no instruction in this about what the application looks like. Is it going to be a lottery such that there's an equitable process that's ignorant to your size, scale, type of license you have? And then if so, is that lottery person going to have to work with their local cannabis control board, if there is one, to get allowance? Except it's way too, like, what does that look like? I just want to name a couple of things. There's no clarity on who gets the license or how that happens, as I said. And then there's lack of clarity around consumption and deferring to the CCB on prescribing limits on attendees, types of products which may be consumed at the event. We don't even have public consumption yet. There should be no allowance for consumption at an event until people have clarity on the ability to consume publicly, as they come with tobacco and taste the tobacco.
That's an even bigger conversation.
But we can't, but from our perspective, it's entirely inequitable. We have producers right now living in Section 8 housing. They are growing cannabis, they are selling cannabis, they can't consume it legally anywhere. But you're saying they could go to an event, 1 of 10 held per year in the state, and have it potentially legally consumed. Like, the degree of inequity there is extremely concerned.
Thomas, you have.
So you raise valid points. I would just say, in the light of this process, those are all a lot of things that if this stays in the bill, I think the House would love to probably dive deeper into to address those concerns. I don't know if there's enough time.
If I could come back with a redraft of this tomorrow to propose as an amendment, that would be great. These are things I've raised. They're things I've talked to judiciary about. I'm sorry, I don't know where that got lost in the process, but that does create a much more cohesive market experience. And I don't think we should send this to finance without acknowledging that we haven't put enough policy guidance on what we mean by event permits.
Sure, I'm just, as the chair, I'm fine with the language as is, but if you want to try to revise it this week.
I'm fine with the language as is too, but Pepper, if we could, we're not voting this out today, so if Keisha wanted to work on this, I don't think you can, quite honestly, I will say, if you do not have time to look at consuming statewide open consumption, that's a big difference.
So it's not open consumption, it's our tobacco's consumed.
Doesn't matter. I think I think that is going to be a challenge. I think that we really have to stick it to events. And I think if you want to come up with some new language around events, checking in with Pepper and Tucker and Graham and Jeffrey, G squared over there. G squared, I think aren't you both G?
We are G.
I know.
This is true. I like it.
The G squared community. I think that would be great and we could look at that, but I don't think that we can entertain at the moment a conversation about statewide consumption in public places, or that will really be a much bigger issue that I think that will be a challenge. But I think that in light of events, I mean, I'm very supportive of doing events. I'm very supportive of our exploring these as pilots, because we desperately need to be able to.
All I'm saying is when we legalized cannabis, we didn't give people a safe and legal place to consume it.
Then we need to create those places, but I also think many of us, having the experience of New York State next door, have no interest in repeating what New York State has had to go through.
I don't know what that means.
That means if you walk on a New York City street, you could get high just breathing the air.
On that, guys.
So I think that creating safe and legal places to consume is great. I think that that's what we're trying to do in the events. And I would support, I think that we would all be interested in seeing an amendment that could address that. Although I think this does a lot of that. And Pepper, I think if you could, and Keisha and Jeff G Squared could come up with some new language, that'd be fine.
Just for a brief second, I don't want to belabor this. I want to move on to other sections, but I'm just recalling past sessions, and a focused, fixed location seemed to be a broader, more longer conversation with multiple stakeholders versus, because you need to think about traffic safety, departing from that event versus allowing people to consume around their homes in different areas and not feeling the pressure of having to consume in a fixed time and then go home. So I'm just recalling past conversations in session. I just want to remind the committee of that. And I'll stop there.
So I'm gonna let you four come up with, let's come up with an amendment that we are willing to entertain. I would include Tucker, obviously, because it needs to be drafted
For which topic? For the event permits?
for the event purpose. But I think, I'm hoping this committee is consistently willing to support event permits because we voted them out and supported them last year. Okay, great. Moving on. Section 9 is Section 8.
Section 8, page 8, the delivery permit.
I have less, how are we all feeling? But I would suggest that this is a discussion that needs to be in the House as well. We don't have time to take this up. It's a big discussion. The event permits we have discussed in this committee with the same group of people, but I don't believe we have the same consensus around delivery.
Agreed.
Thomas.
So I definitely want to hear from Senator Broxton or Weeks. I don't know what we're trying to accomplish with this. I'm not against them, not necessarily for. I have hesitations for delivery and all the rules that were raised in the last conversation. So if we do want to keep this in, I'd want to dive very deeply into what the implications of this would be and maybe revisit what the Cannabis Control Board has said on this topic, whether or not support or against.
Dave said that the biggest bottleneck is we keep saying we have a crisis where we have too many cannabis producers and they're all going out of business, but we haven't allowed them to access most of the state, basically. We have a concentration of retailers in the lesser number of municipalities that have allowed for retail. Those retailers don't have to take product from small consumers. So this is an area where, to me, it relates exactly to the question of how are we going to help our in-state cultivators, manufacturers, because that's what's coming, is retailers are going to be able to take, if it's descheduled and things can cross state lines, especially, they're going to be able to take, the best of the best from around the country, whatever that means. But we have a quality brand in Vermont, and that quality brand is at risk if it's unclear to people, if it starts to become more and more unclear to people what was made in the state, comes from their local farmer. I mean, that's our whole thing.
So I would just remind us, I know Graham, you have your hand up. I just want us to, this is a pilot. Again, this is a pilot. This, it's only 10 permits, and it would, I think this would, and is it, the concern I think for some people is whether this would just be for retailers to do this or all growers or cultivators.
Cannabis establishments, which again is the broadest definition of the licenses. So it includes.
So it's licensees, cultivator licensees,
All licenses.
anyone who's licensed to either grow or sell.
Yes.
Could deliver. But they would have to, in this pilot, they would have to go through there would be 10 permits for the first year. Is it a 2-year or 1-year pilot?
It's a 2-year pilot.
2-year pilot.
That's and not more than 10 are issued in a given.
So this is where you could limit it to tier 1 and 2
Yes,
growers and
I would-
manufacturers.
I would support that. Grant, sorry, we had to sort of clarify that.
No, I mean, I think when you said at the beginning of this, there's a lot of unpacking of important. This is the most probably, this and the social equity component is the most important part of this bill from our coalition's perspective. And I think we are most representative coalition of stakeholders in this room on this issue. I just push back a little bit at Medical Society's comment the other day. At the joint hearing you all had, there were 2 producers, there were 4 or 5 medical people. Like, so producers are the underrepresented people here. And I think this is a great case in point. All of the CCB's research on producers, this is what people want. We've lost literally almost 200 people from this marketplace since it started. It is, quite frankly, we feel it's a right for producers to be able to sell that thing. It's not a fee permit. It's quite insulting as someone who takes time to, as a farmer, you produce a product. You are telling them they have to take that product, give it to somebody else who will then make money off that. Well, they are barely able to pay their bills. Lastly, we would not support either of these as pilot programs. We didn't support the event license last year. This is not a legitimate pilot program. 10 licensees, like, we still don't understand how this would be administered. Who would have access? What kind of data is 10 licenses going to give you? The CCB has more than enough capacity to support any capacity to administer. In this bill, you reduce the excise tax by 4%. That money, you
We haven't gotten to that section
but
yet.
if you don't reduce the excise tax, that money can go to the CCB. It could also go to the LAOB. As we
Going to
discussed.
prevention
It already goes to
and LAOB.
right.
Okay, David.
Well, I just wanted to say that, I fully sympathize with the need for direct sales. Okay, I get that, but I
That's
don't think
different from this.
that's correct. That's why I'm trying to deconflict the two. Delivery permit, which is the section we're in right now, from my perspective, is a different concept. I think if you want to address direct sales, there needs to be some direct sales language in here. That's all.
So let me work on this section 2.
Pepper, I just want Pepper to weigh in on this.
I mean, on this section, I can let Dave's memo speak for the board, but I mean, this,
Oh,
this
but-
section raises questions for us at the
Yes, I
board.
know it does.
Pen sales, can you deliver anywhere? Can you deliver to a college dorm room? I mean, there's no authorization, there's no prohibition on that, and there's no direction to us to prohibit the types of addresses they could be delivered to. Medical program, delivering the medical program operates very differently than this. Is it an opt-in?
I imagine you would want to limit that, I mean,
But there's no authorization for us to do that in this, as far as I can tell.
okay, so we can just rewrite the language. So
Right.
let's work on.
Right.
So-
there's-
I would entertain if you're going to do this, but this is Tucker's time too. So Tucker's got it. I mean, if you can rewrite this simply, and Graham, I would say to you that, you also need to bring people along. So a pilot enables the legislature to be brought along because not everybody's in the same place.
Well,
I don't,
let's look at maybe like a pilot is different than 10 permits. A pilot could say it starts with this tier of grower.
I also think that the group who has to administer it has to also own it too. So I think that between the 3, with Tucker drafting it, I think I'm happy to tweak this in a way that makes it work better for CCB, because as I know the CCB has some issues with this. If there's any way to make it easier for the CCB, and Graham, I hear you, but I also know this body, and I know we have to be brought along. So if a pilot in 2 years gives you good data, require that we collect better data. But I think that we also have to be made comfortable with things too. So, I mean, the political reality doesn't all happen overnight. Jeffrey.
I just want to reinforce some of the statements that my colleague Graham made, that this section, believe it or not, what we're hearing from licensees is potentially the most important section
Yeah,
to the
no,
entire industry.
Thank you.
And I just would urge this committee to recall Damien Fagan's previous testimony that you all had. I believe he was in this committee twice.
Yeah.
Sequencing is important here when it comes to the formation of a market, such that if you want to capture the customers, right now we're capturing maybe 30, maybe 40% of the customer base in this state, because many customers would rather shop directly with their producer, and that producer would then send the customer to the retail shop. So what we know is that enabling some sort of well-regulated, fair direct sales for small producers, even if it's through a pilot program, which we would urge you to reconsider with not just delivery, but also on-site as an option, which we believe would make it more politically feasible. It's not just purely delivery. Give producers that option. And we are losing our talent, so that you all know. We are losing artisans on a weekly basis in the state because of that inability to directly connect with customers. And we hope you all consider that.
Yeah, so
It's really important.
Tucker.
Yes.
So to go to David's question, delivery and direct sales, needless to say, a fine line. CCB and what, direct sales is a different kettle of fish from delivery, but delivery is sort of a direct sale. Can you help us to go to David's concern? How do we, is it a difference without a distinction? I mean, is it a distinction without a difference? Is it, okay.
I mean, if we sort of flip a switch and have, you know, the 400 or so cultivators and product manufacturers in the state immediately start having direct sales, that's just a huge number of new retail locations, which I think is where a lot of the concern around selling to youth or having product recalls or tax collection or transaction limits or any other kind of aspects of the kind of regulatory framework that we put into place over the last 5 years. That's where a lot of the kind of concerns come to, you know, members of the public walking in and purchasing cannabis. So I just, you have to be comfortable with a certain amount of tax avoidance and sales to youth. I mean, you just have to be okay with that because it happens in the alcohol context. It happens, you know, it's just, we can do it, but we as an agency want the same level of scrutiny that we're providing to the current retail outlets. We just need more resources if you want that same level of oversight.
If I may share.
Okay, Jeffrey and then Thomas.
What I'm hearing is perhaps, and we know that the agency has delivered, just like how they've delivered numerous reports about THC caps. We know that they have also delivered numerous reports supporting direct sales, including this past Act 56 report that you all should have. But what I'm also hearing is support for that, but maybe the way that it's provided to them to manage. So maybe like a pilot program would be acceptable and doable for them. That's what I'm hearing. The importance is there, but make sure that we can actually operate something. So maybe that's a good approach there.
And it has to be designed so that you could actually, with your staff, manage.
I think that part of, if we do events, that is piloting direct to consumer sales. That's how I see that. There's nothing in this language that requires this to run through a retail license. A cultivator could get an event permit and have a direct to consumer sale that we can manage. And then we can write a report as to, did anything go wrong? Are all the concerns that we've raised around age restrictions or tax avoidance or anything else, were they realized? Do we need additional staff for direct to consumer sales? The answer may be no, but I think that
delivery needs a bigger conversation as a result. Graham, Brent, you have a thought.
Well, I just want to bring up, I watched you all debate this must have been a few weeks ago, so a little bit, and it really made me realize you all need farmers in the room talking to you about this. Like, we're quite frankly coming here year after year and we're gaslit by things like Pepper just said. Like, we're going to see more youth sales. We're going to see tax avoidance. Where's the data supporting that? We have intensive tracking systems. We have the person who founded the track and trace system for hemp as a member of our coalition. There is no indication that people will be able to get around the track and trace system. They're currently driving cannabis products all around the state, making fewer sales, giving out free samples, driving all around for a whole day, maybe making no sales. We have a system in place. And quite frankly, we could come in here, we could articulate exactly all these things. The proper place for that is rulemaking. We have proposed a clear rulemaking process for the CCB in the last 5 years around this issue. So it's quite frankly frustrating to me as representative of the agricultural community, watching people lose their shirts being regulated by an agency which comes to our cultivator meetings every summer, came twice this year and said they would support direct sales. Here they are speaking against it and insinuating these people are going to avoid tax, sell to underage people. We don't have any evidence of this, people. It's just incredibly frustrating.
Yeah, I agree. David,
I hear what everybody's saying, but I just heard CCB say that this section 70 event permit is a classic example of a small scale pilot to test direct sales. So why not? Why not give
I
it a
think-
go?
yes, on the event sales. I mean, I think we're gonna see a new draft on that. I think I'm hopeful we'll move the events. The question is the difference, and the question is the delivery pilot, and it's a pilot.
So in section 8, move this conversation along. Where I currently am is I only feel comfortable with a pilot of sorts, and I'm also only going to feel comfortable if the CCB, who I do trust, comes forward saying the language is something that they can work with. So that's where I am. So I'd like to then have a language that seems like they can work with it.
So let me work on.
Okay, tomorrow, we need the language tomorrow. At Pepper, Keisha, G squared. You up to this?
Yeah, and I just want to stress that
Robert.
we're conflating,
Well, that makes it true.
events with delivery, and what we're hearing is producers would favor delivery, changing that section to more meet their needs from a direct sales point. We
Okay.
feel like that's closer already. So yes, absolutely.
Let's-
And Tucker, right? So we'll figure out what Tucker's.
Thank you.
all 4 of you, all 5 of you. Tucker. Nine,
This
section
all
9 is the
together
piece of cake.
to encapsulate the words on the page and perhaps some of the legal reasoning involved in those 2 sections.
Right.
Section 7, the event permit was made sufficiently broad, discretion was granted to CCB and the limit of the pilot to cover all sorts of events, including direct sales. It was the committee's attempt to have a pilot program that covered everything from catering to special events to direct sales, limited to 10 of those permits issued a year with guidelines from the CCP. Section 8, the delivery permit language, is verbatim how this is established for alcoholic beverages. Right. Specifically, the retail licensees in the alcoholic beverage space. This is what they are allowed to do and the exact requirements in statute for when they deliver directly to a consumer. There is a separate part of alcoholic beverages regulation where very specific manufacturers, beer and wine, are allowed to sell directly to consumers, either at their manufacturing space or through common carriers. But the common carriers language was not incorporated as part of the delivery permit because there's not high level of legal certainty that any of those common carriers would be willing to ship even if the city.
Right. I mean, and just to be fair, they have on-site consumption and all, like there's just a whole nother world that they could go to.
Okay, so on both events and delivery, we will entertain new language tomorrow.
Section 9 contains the CCB rules and report. To reorient you to this, this is a report on how the pilot program carried out, and then rulemaking authority with the rules to take effect at the end of the pilot. And the concept here is that based on how the pilot turns out, the recommendations from the CCB, there would be statutory changes aligned with rules filed by the CCB for both of these programs.
Right. So without further comment, I think we're probably all fine with section. Section 10, advertising.
Sections 10 and 11 deal with advertising.
Okay.
Yes.
And I would boldly propose, we do not have the time to deal with the advertising piece. And I would, I think it's a much bigger, I think it's a big conversation. It deserves serious consideration and we do not have the time for it. If we could settle the key pieces we still have yet to settle, I think advertising is something that we are going to have to give to the House to do further exploration on. I know
What
there's a lot of
commitment you
interest
have
in
from the
solving this
House
problem.
to look at these pieces.
Our time, we have not the time here in this committee to take.
But do you have their commitment to look at these sections?
I think we have commitment for them to look at all the work, then I will have that conversation with them.
Could you have that conversation about, because there was a expensive lawsuit around this topic. We have, I mean, this is where I think we got the most compelling testimony that other states are advertising in our state and they are facing not the same playing field. This is one that if cannabis gets descheduled by November of 2026, I have major concerns about just
I do too.
letting this go.
And
I don't know where we're coming, like, I don't know where this is coming from. I didn't hear that this section was controversial to anyone. Because we have full page advertising for cannabis in our newspapers right now. It's just not from Vermonters.
well, I just felt that we did not get enough testimony on advertising, but I don't know, how does the rest? I mean, what this, Tucker, why don't you just remind us what this section actually does? And because I just probably have.
I don't know where that comes from because
Okay, Tucker, would you?
First in this section, cannabis establishments, there's a prohibition that they shall not advertise their products via any means unless the licensee can demonstrate that not more than 15% of the audience is reasonably expected to be under 21. The language shifts that so that cannabis establishments shall not place a paid advertisement in third-party media unless the licensee can show that not more than 30% of the audience is reasonably expected to be under 21.
So the key fix here is out-of-state advertising. Does this actually fix that, Pepper? I mean, because I know advertising is a challenge for you. I mean, you have to review all these things. And so tell us how you are weighing in on this section.
I think the only way to truly fix the disparity between out-of-state people advertising in our state in ways that Vermonters can't is to just copy and paste New York's statutes on advertising, because then we would be on the same playing field as them. I have had this conversation with New Jersey and Connecticut about their experience the exact same problems where New Yorkers are advertising in Massachusetts, folks are advertising in Connecticut. In New York, they've got these shared media markets with New York City, in New Jersey, I should say. They're dealing with the same issue. In Connecticut, they have a line in their advertising laws that say only licensed cannabis establishments shall be allowed to advertise in this state. They've never enforced it because they don't. I mean, essentially, they'd be enforcing it against the local newspapers that are advertising. You're not necessarily going to go after the cannabis licensee from Massachusetts who's advertising. You're going to be the person who actually violated the law, which is the local newspaper, the local billboard. We don't have billboards here, but. So they've never really tested this out. But our neighbors are experiencing the same problem. And the only way to really solve it is to put all of New England on an equal playing field with respect to advertising.
Which I would love to have doing that on an equal playing field, period. And then we're going to chat about that in a minute in terms of getting a compact.
I have the comparison.
Get these guys.
You have the comparison chart. The longest section is around advertising. You can see that all New England states have this audience composition requirement. Some are more restrictive, some are less restrictive. The fact that you're shifting this to paid advertisements, to me, just kind of blows the lid on social media. And just the fact that the general demographics in Vermont are about 21% under the age of 21, just means that cannabis advertisements will be able to appear in most fora. So you just have to make a policy decision on whether that's okay. I mean, honestly, we'll implement the law however it's written.
Thomas.
I don't want to penalize local papers and local media outlets. We need to support them and prop them up in this day and age. So my question though, do you support this language? Do you have an opinion that the Cannabis Control Board support this in front of us?
Again, I don't want to this is purely a policy decision. Do you want cannabis advertising more broadly or not? I mean, that's what this is.
But also this language doesn't incorporate this language that we're looking at incorporate the New York State language. It's
not that I'm aware of. I mean, I'm happy to provide Tucker or whomever just the specific statutes and the regulations behind them. I mean, I did that work to create that chart, so I have it.
And, but again, I would say that if we did that, that in and of itself would require a lot more conversation than we probably have time for at the moment. I think that Gabe's email to Gabe's memo to us said they do not support striking the pre-publication review process, even though it's, I think, quite onerous, isn't it?
So we do have some data on that. I'm not sure if it's in Gabe's thing, but since the lawsuit was settled, we have added an extra day of advertising review. So the average time between submission and approval or response is 2.5 days. It takes about 7 hours worth of staff time a week. So, I mean, it's not incredibly onerous. We catch a lot of little things that, you know, that would then turn into advertising actions. You know, if you take away pre-approval and we see what's an illegal advertisement for a somewhat minor issue, we have to hit them with a letter of warning or some kind of enforcement action. You know, so
Okay, but right now you have businesses in New York that are frankly advertising things that we would consider illegal, right? Like win a car if you keep buying cannabis or whatever it is. And we can't even in the same way use our rules to just create a level playing field or say you can't advertise that kind of thing in Vermont, right? So we are completely disadvantaging our local folks. And there was something else you said in there, what I thought the CCB was willing to accept was what happens under Department of Liquor and Lottery. It's a complaint-driven system. They get a preview of the advertising. If it doesn't violate their standards, it's a simple, no news is good news. That's how Liquor and Lottery operate.
they have pre-approval.
They have the option to exercise pre-approval because they get several days to look at it before it's allowed to be published.
How would you be if we kept pre-approval? We strike it in this bill. It sounds like you.
But it's not an affirmative pre-approval in DLL.
Is it, Tucker?
No. That's exact. I asked Tucker to draft this like DLL.
There is not an express pre-approval process for alcoholic beverage advertising. And
Or sports
alcoholic beverage advertising, I will reorient the committee, is largely covered by Tax and Trade Bureau regulation at the federal level, not at the state level. In fact, the only advertising provision that exists under Title VII for alcoholic beverages is a prohibition on stating in advertisements what the alcohol by volume content is for a particular beverage or comparing beverages, making a statement that the alcohol by volume content of your beverage is higher than your competitors. That language is brought into the bill that you have in front of you. It replaces the pre-approval language with a prohibition on stating the THC content of the products that be used.
I think omitting this section is really letting New Hampshire and New York and Massachusetts eat our lunch in a way that we don't even believe is right. So I have really strong feelings about this one.
Well, I'm just looking at the comparison of advertising between Vermont and New York, and they're so close. I'm not sure how they're getting under the wire and whatnot.
This is more because they don't, first of all, I don't know how you can advertise to get a car in New York, frankly, but they're doing it here, so. That's
I don't
in
see a
7 days.
car being offered as prohibition, but I am seeing the audience as being relatively close, good 5%. So
You're not supposed to offer product, like you're not supposed to, that's considered, what is that? Pepper, you're not supposed to say you could win a car.
I know that there is a
Inducement, thank you, Pepper. So we don't even have the ability to say to our papers in the state, you should not be publishing an advertisement that offers an inducement if it's from New York.
So is the rub that they're offering far or that they're advertising in our paper when our
The
growers?
rub is the advertising their cannabis.
So how are they, again, given that the audience goals are nearly equal? They're equivalent.
I mean, this is when CCB said right now they don't feel like they have the tools to go after that. While they go after that, I'd also like to harmonize advertising with what's required of liquor and lottery. Because otherwise it's a lengthy pre-approval.
What I fail to understand is why Vermont CCB can't send a warning letter to a New York advertiser who's paid to have an advertisement at a Vermont paper.
We have no law that doesn't allow them to advertise in our papers. Is that correct?
That's right. I mean, and the person who's actually doing the advertising is the newspaper. I mean, the letter would go to them. It would go to 7 days.
So then they would then in effect inform their, right, whoever paid for that advertising.
I do like to bring it back to destigmatize the industry, and if liquor can advertise in papers, I think the pot stores should be able to advertise in papers.
Liquor's limited in how I can advertise,
Liquor's limited now. I can advertise.
but liquor and lottery doesn't. They trust a lot of Vermont establishments to follow the rules that are set out in our statute.
So, but they also have pre-approval. They just have a longer stretch of time.
No, they don't have a pre-approval process. They have a complaint driven, or they have the ability to opt in to pulling an ad before.
Yeah, and I'm not sure they're the same. So I think we are a much younger industry. I think that I don't mind the pre-approval of the CCB. I do agree with you. I think we have to be able to have equity in our ability to advertise.
So the only people
across
we're
states.
pre-approving are in our state, and if we're saying we're not pre-approving people from out of our state, then we have a non-level playing field.
To clarify some of this pre-approval stuff with DLL, just recall that the Department of Liquor and Lottery is the sole business that
Yes.
is allowed to sell certain types of alcoholic beverages in the state. And what we might be referring to is the advertisements that are placed by those agents of the department, aka the 802 Spirits locations. And the advertisements they're allowed to put out. The actual manufacturers are not regulated
Subject
to
to the
that.
same thing.
But the on-site locations are also heavily regulated. They can't say win a car if you drink a whole keg of beer. They can't say,
Those are all in DLL rules and
Right.
cover things like happy hours and daily discounts.
Okay, to get through the rest of the bill, Pepper and Keisha, how do we want to move this forward? Because I mean, I appreciate the sentiment behind some of this, but I also appreciate the fact that we also have to make it work.
I just thought we
But
spent
CCB
significant time on this for good reason, because it's a really important way to level the playing field.
I appreciate that, but I'm also appreciating how little time we actually have, which is why I thought if we could get it to, with there was
So I didn't know
something
we were
that we
striking
could
everything
get
out of the bill
if we.
today.
On this one, Madam Chair, I'm fine with taking it out or leaving it in. I feel like leaving it in will force the conversation in the House. There will be more of that. I don't have any concerns with the language as currently presented, but I'd love to hear from Senator Brock, Senator Weeks, where they are on this.
I'm inclined to leave it in. At the same time, though, I think about advertising. I don't know enough about how the ads are placed and what limits, if any, there are in ads that are directed specifically to Vermonters. Do they appear solely in publications that are distributed in Vermont? Do they appear elsewhere outside of Vermont? How do you measure the intent of what the advertiser has? Well, I put this in this paper that goes on both sides of the border because I'm aiming at my New York authority. How do you prevent that? I don't
Well,
know
when
how you
sports
prevent
betting is advertising on Netflix, then we could have this conversation about all of the licenses and how they're advertised,
it.
but
So, I'm just not sure that this is a fruitful conversation because I don't know how you limit it.
I guess what I'm saying is let's just harmonize it.
I'm happy to harmonize it, but my concern is, that we are partners with the CCB in large measure, and we're partners with our growers, and we're partners with a lot of people in this industry. Are you wanting, if we go forward with this, would you still want us to keep in E and 1 and 2?
Approvals. You want us to keep approval?
The pre-approval to me is a useful tool for us right now. I mean, I'll just put it that way. It's just, we spend 7 hours a week doing it versus if you get rid of it and we have to convert all of our advertising complaints into notices of violation that include appellate rights. And
It's much easier to pre-approve.
So at the very least, though, Pepper, you're saying you have no control over a New York business advertising in 7 days with an inducement that you would edit out of a.
So you actually got, so we should take inducement out because you guys repealed the prohibition on inducements in 2023.
Show us where that is in this
It's in
section.
Title 7, because you did this 2 years
So it's
ago.
not here.
No.
So if a cannabis business advertised and said, well, you can enter to win a car, you would allow for that in Vermont.
If it was otherwise compliant, that is a legal advertisement. Yes. And, you know, I
Okay.
should also just say that we've deemed that all newspapers meet the audience composition at 85%, because people under 21 generally aren't reading newspapers anymore. So, you know,
That's not completely true.
it,
They might
well,
read the back. of
at a
something.
lesser degree than the
Maybe
general
we are.
population. So, and we keep a running list of all of the media, the fora that have been met the audience composition already.
So I think I'd like to ask what would make you more comfortable with this section, because I think I hear that the committee is willing to move forward with it. What, Pepper, would you be willing to take out or add back in? The only things are struck here. Well, and maybe you can think about that and get back to it tomorrow.
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Will do, yes.
Okay, great. Section 11.
You can move through section 11 because it's a corresponding amendment relating to
Yep.
advertising.
Okay, excise tax.
Lowering excise tax from 14% to 10%.
Okay.
Section 12.
Thank you. You can, Ted Barnett, left, but he has already given us a memo on this. My concern with this is less money from prevention. I think that this is a real hard line. I believe for the governor, the only way the governor signed this bill was that there was a lot of money for prevention. And I think lowering this, I believe, is really important for us to maintain the amount of money that's going into prevention, that's going into the LAOB, that's going into all the places that need it to go. Maybe also to other places you're thinking about it going, like the legal center, so that they could do some advice and counsel on cannabis. But I don't think lowering it, and I appreciate that it's a price challenge. It's less tax than other states. I don't feel like we need to do this. And I think there's a big loss that we have.
There's a couple comments I would make. Number one, I hear you because it took a long time for us to lower the tax on spirits. It was extremely high until they were saying we're basically priced out of the market with the tax on spirits. And then we did lower it. So I hear you that it may not in its current form be ready for prime time this year. My request would be that we take it from 14 to 13, recognizing that it is helpful for local communities who are now going to have more time, place, manner regulation over cannabis to institute a 1% local option tax when they do that. And so that we do not simply compound the tax burden on consumers or the
excise taxes are not hard. I mean, I think that we're little apples and we're just local option tax and excise tax.
I mean, they pay that's because they pay an excise tax, the sales tax, and a local option tax. Like they pay all the taxes. That's why what we did with spirits. That's why.
Yeah,
it's a lot of taxes.
Yeah, I really think that I think that we have many other good provisions in this bill. I think that this is one that I'm not supporting at the moment, and I think that's partly because of where the money goes to, and local option taxes. I mean, you look at the tax chart, and I just don't feel compelled to do this. Also knowing that the key piece for the governor is prevention.
I don't think this is the year to have this conversation, so.
Yeah. So, and the House can take it down if they are so compelled to do so. Municipal authority.
Yes, the next two sections deal with local government provisions in Title VII. The first allows municipalities to add any ordinance or bylaw condition on issuance of the local permit. And then further on in that section, And the language has not been updated since Senator Chittenden raised some concerns about the clarity in subsection B. But that language will reflect that prohibition on the adoption of certain types of ordinances and bylaws is a prohibition on expressly and totally prohibiting the operation of a cannabis establishment
Throughout the whole city.
throughout the whole city.
I can still pick time, place and manner, district and area.
They'll apply their bylaws. It's,
Should we be limiting this just to retail?
this is cannabis establishments probably.
So that is
Yes.
limits just to retail.
A lot
No,
of, they might
it's
have,
also,
they might have a manufacturing operation at the back of
Right,
the
right.
retail, yeah,
it is a cannabis establishment that is receiving a license through the CCB under current law too, that is subject to the conditions on the issuance of. So that's cannabis establishments property.
So I,
Just empowering municipalities that opt in, so this seems to make sense to me. Yeah.
so section got that 13, section 4, I'm okay with 13.
Section,
Section 14,
this is compelling any municipality that has not held their opt-in vote to hold an opt-in vote at the general election.
I think it's David, I'm gonna channel David Weeks for a moment, which it says this is not a burdensome thing for towns to do at the moment. They can call petition, they can get a petition up to, I've watched several of my towns do this, and that they've had to do it once or twice to get the town to opt in, but it is not a burdensome process to go through a petition to have a town vote on voting as in. I think it would be a big challenge to do the other, and I don't know how
I'm
other
in a
people
big
feel, but
challenge
I'm not a
against
big fan.
status quo where they have to opt in.
Right now, they have to opt in,
Right.
they have to vote to opt in.
right, so,
So there's no challenge right now. I mean, they want to opt in, they opt in.
But what you,
This does change it to requiring them to opt out.
yes,
So that's where I.
It doesn't, it does
Force it to
not,
vote.
it does
Yeah.
not flip the system. It requires the municipalities to vote. on the issue.
it just calls the question.
yes. So you're saying you support calling the question?
No, don't think you can support that.
I think what I heard David Weeks say is that he did not, that he felt at the moment a town could easily pull together. It's not onerous to,
If a town decided they wanted an establishment in their jurisdiction, they hold a vote and they opt in. That's the current law, right?
right.
I'm okay with that. I don't think every town needs to analyze, hold a vote on whether to opt in or opt out. I mean, be forced to opt in and then vote to opt out. I don't think that exercise is necessary. That's all.
Jeffrey,
I will say,
no, you were,
you know, as an organization, we have worked very closely with townspeople, licensees, and those who wish to see retail sales in their town. And I will say what we hear from them is, and not the municipality's perspective, but just the residents' perspective. And we have had training and education sessions on how to enact. It is a burden. It is a burden. It's a challenge.
It's a burden. It should be a burden. That's the whole point.
No, I agree. And I think as a result, we're now 3 years in, and if we look at what we have about 30% of the towns of 247 localities that have opted in. And I think that demonstrates that hurdle, with respect.
It's not a demonstrate. It's a couple different measures. You demonstrate a burden, you demonstrate a desire to opt in, opt out. And
This is another bottleneck in my mind for, especially the farmers. If we say you can't get to the front of line for delivery, you have huge rural swaths of the state that have no cannabis retailer, and people would have to travel, tens of, if not 100 miles or more to get to a cannabis retailer. Then there's no, for most communities, there's no benefit to opting in. So why would they? But saying, hey, you have to give your citizens the opportunity to either affirmatively opt in or out.
every citizen has the opportunity to petition their municipality to opt in. What's the difference?
Yeah, I'm not necessarily supportive of just forcing this on the ballot this fall. I
It's
would
not.
would be, it's not this fall, I think it's this fall.
Whichever.
It is.
Yeah, whatever.
Well, maybe we started.
I would be interested, and I know this is your expertise, your realm, as right now, Vermont does the law allow for 50 citizens of a town to force this to be on a ballot?
Usually a percent.
Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't think so, because the select
Right.
board ultimately had the choice to.
Right. So direct democracy at the local level is determined by specific procedures related to issues. There's no broadly available right to petition. And it is up to the local legislative body to determine what gets put on the ballot.
Yeah.
Could 50 citizens get together, sign a petition, submit it to the legislative body and use that as leverage? It's the legislative body to put this on the ballot. Absolutely. But there is no ballot, no binding ballot initiative related to.
And I know this is
These
a rebel
objects.
fight South Burlington, but here's my next question is there such a standard where I could support is maybe enabling that so that if 50 citizens or a portion of the, which we do have that, we have a percentage of the registered voters, if they sign a petition that could force ordinances and so on.
I think GovOps would have problem with that because that would be like allowing ballot items.
Well, this might be a GovOps discussion.
Support ballot items.
Yeah,
But
and
I don't.
Well, GovOps would have. to
but
do
how
something.
does it
Or that could be forced on with a percentage.
Uh,
There's precedent.
no, but there is rescission votes that can be petitioned.
But in this particular situation, you would not have anything on a ballot at all if not a group of citizens or some population has asked it to be put on a ballot. Of those things that have been put on a ballot in Vermont, have any of them ever failed about cannabis?
Oh,
If so,
yes,
how
yeah.
many
Oh, yeah.
compared to the total?
sure, yeah.
Well, that's
I
the point.
represent a number
How
of
many
towns where
have
they
failed? Because what that does is it gives us an indication of public sentiment, you know, in a variety of municipalities on a yes or no basis. And I think it's important for us to know that before we go to the
I
next.
support punting this to GovOps and I have to go.
I can't support punting this GovOps.
Can I make a
Punting it to the
suggestion
House.
that we look at moving the date by which they have to have a vote out to 2030?
Or we should all get reelected and have this debate again next year, but I gotta run.
I agree.
So I appreciate
the
we're
answer on
gonna
the question
have-
that I asked regarding how many of these failed out of the vote.
So I actually don't know.
Pepper might know. Pepper.
What is it, like 10 maybe?
Yeah, under 10. But what's not captured in that also are efforts that didn't reach the ballot. And there's more of those attempts.
But also,
Then,
we,
yeah.
we had towns, Randy, that voted no initially, and then on the second vote voted yes, like Sharon's the latest example of that.
Sure.
It's
And
a
I think,
huge burden.
and I think Eden lost by 1 or 2 people to even get on the ballot. And 2 of those people were like, oh, if I saw you, I would. So it's a little messy.
The stigma prevails in this context.
The industry is supportive.
Okay, I think we're going to have to take things up again. Thank you, everybody. We're moving slowly. So you and Pepper, Jeffrey, can we, you and Pepper and Keisha can come up with kinds of
Yep. 78.
events and delivery language?
Sure.
And maybe on this too?
What about 3 to 3:30 in ag?
Yeah.